The state of California paused a $40,000 accessory dwelling unit grant that it was giving homeowners all around the state. But there's another $50 million in funding that remains untouched. And you can have a say in how it gets used. You can ask for more grants, or you could say it should go to different programs, or it should be the grant but a modified version of it with some improvements. This video is going to teach you how to have your say and make your voice heard with explanations of how everything works, links in the description below, and a little bit of humble bragging. You know what? Because 2023, no more humility. You're awesome. This whole thing is awesome. This community is amazing. Way to go, us. So part one, is there more funding or not, right? Right now, if you go to the CalHFA website that used to administer this grant, it has no more information on it. It says it's paused. So last year, the state legislators in California approved $50 million to go to CalHFA, which is the same agency that administered the $40,000 ADU grant. And at that time, the legislator said, hey, study how best to spend this money. Because back then, in the summer, the grant had been live for several months and had only disbursed like a couple dozen grants. So in their heads, they're like, well, why do we put $100 million aside and we've only used like a couple $100,000. That's not a great sign. So study how we should better use this money, and here's another $50 million once you figure that out. Unbeknownst to those legislators, at the very same time, we were improving how the grant got implemented. Right? CalHFA loosened the eligibility requirements on income especially. CalHFA also increased the amount of the grant from $25,000 per applicant to $40,000 per applicant. And at the same time, CalHFA was figuring out how to let nonprofits administer the grant and qualify homeowners for the grant instead of only working with lenders. And sure enough, as you can imagine, some clever nonprofit entities figured out ways to administer the grant with an escrow account that didn't require any lending requirement, right? So now homeowners could bring cash to the project or bring outside financing, and they'd still qualify for the grant through this controlled escrow account. It met all of CalHFA's requirements, it met all of the state legislators' requirements, and it got the product out, the grant, out to the largest number of people. And this is where the humble bragging comes in, because How To ADU played a small part in that, and it was awesome. You know, there's a Facebook group with 20,000 people in it now. There's this YouTube channel. TikTok's got 50,000 people. It's crazy, right? So when stakeholders want to figure out what's blocking use of the grant, you know who they go to? They go to you guys. They go to this community. They hit the comment section, and they actually check what real homeowners are saying. And that's a great segue because we're in this funny situation where CalHFA has a working grant program. They have a requirement to convene a working group to see if there's anything they can improve or if they should change things. And normally the people they invite to that working group would include a lot of lending institutions. And in addition to that, they're including us in that working group. So this video is my attempt to get feedback from you because I'm going to be in a meeting with all these muckety mucks trying to advise CalHFA on how best to spend the next $50 million. And if you drop a comment in here, go down to the comments right now. That's the feedback I'm getting, right? So there's also a form in the video description. If you could fill that out, it's going to give me hard data, which is going to be priceless because I want to be the person who shows up and says, look, we got to stop asking institutional stakeholders. Get outside of the government offices, ask real homeowners, ask real estate investors. That's what's going to unlock ADU production. So if you're watching this far, please check out the link in the description below to fill out my survey about the grant and also sign up for updates so that you can get more information about how to write in and affect how the grant money gets spent. The grant took a while to roll out successfully. Over the first several months, very little money goes out, but as we fix one thing at a time, we find the next bottleneck that's really preventing usage of the grant, and boom, once you figure it all out, all of a sudden, thousands of applicants were coming in, right? And we successfully deployed all this grant money, $100 million, in a very short window of time. Now, TBD, we got to track those projects and make sure that the grant money gets used well, and that actually increases production, and we'll do some data analysis to see if the number of ADUs went up more than we would have expected it to go up without the grant, or if it just kind of moved ADUs around. We'll find all that out eventually. But for now, at least we found ways to deploy that capital. I would say now that we have a working program, the smartest thing the state can do is put more money into that program. You probably don't realize this, but housing production is obscenely expensive. On a typical like multi-family unit apartment building, each door that gets added, like each unit, is costing somewhere north of $500,000 in production cost. And that combines a lot of different factors, and there's a lot of reasons why that number has gotten astronomical. But this year, in the past year alone, we've seen projects come in over $700,000 a unit. And it's nuts, right? When the state wants to fund more units, those are the kinds of figures we're thinking. We got to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per unit. When the state wants to encourage ADU production, the homeowner is willing to take on most of the cost. The state only has to put $40,000 in, and then we get a whole unit for that $40,000 of state money. So it's a very effective way to create market rate housing. ADUs are naturally affordable, so even though we put no strings on them, we know that on average the rent comes out a lot lower than other forms of market rate housing. And that's really, really exciting because all that adds together to say this is one of the most efficient ways that the state can use state funds to create housing that is naturally affordable at market rates. That's pretty cool. And instead of giving it to big developer companies, the state is giving it to small mom and pop homeowners, and that's really exciting too. I don't want to get into the politics, but like, I'm a yes and kind of guy. We have lots of programs that subsidize large developments. This is one of the most successful programs, I think, in California history to subsidize small mom and pop homeowner developers. And that's really cool, right? Let's give more money to taxpayers. Here's some of the other stuff that the working group is tasked to discuss. As you can see, a lot of it has to do with lending innovation. And I think some of these ideas are actually worth talking about. Like if I had $1 billion, I would put a lot of it into the grant, but I would also explore some of these other ideas. But I want to know what you think. So for example, if you could tell Fannie and Freddie, hey, count the future value of ADUs and their rental income. You know, we can't necessarily dictate policy at the federal level, but we can advise on that policy in the working group. That's a good innovation. Like it's in the Biden administration's plan for housing innovation. It's something that we all say at the state level. It's free to say. On the other hand, if there were a program that, for example, said, hey, let's mitigate lender risk. So even if the lender doesn't want to count the future value of your ADU rental income until you've already finished the ADU, in the 1 or more years that it takes you to build and rent out the ADU, during that time period, we'll secure your loan with this state fund. And then once you've finished, that state fund gets released. They use the current value of your finished ADU and the rental income you're generating, and that fund goes to filling the gap for the next ADU in line. There are like innovative programs like that. I was wrapping up this video and then the governor drops a new budget, which might change everything. Just to put a finer point on it, the $50 million that the state legislators approved last year, now the governor is saying there's a deficit and they might pull that $50 million. This is exactly why, if you sign up in the link below the video, I will keep you up to date about all of these news changes, and I'll give you easy ways. You write an email to Governor Newsom's office, you write an email to CalHFA, you fill out a 3-question form for me and my data set before the working group. These are small things that you can do that actually add up and make a big difference, because not a lot of people write in about budget items, right? So when they see 10 or 20 or 100 people do something, politicians freak out. Sorry for jamming this update in the middle of the video. Thank you for using that link in the description below. So check out the link in the video description below. There's just a few questions that it'll take you like 30 seconds to answer, and it'll be really, really helpful when we're talking with these other stakeholders if I have real data. You've made How To ADU an incredibly important community that gets me in the room with these policymakers so that we can hopefully have a really good impact on the situation.